I've been talking about the 12 steps that is a journey towards a better spiritual life, and I want to kind of recap what we've covered already. Step 1, we recognize our brokenness. And I guarantee you, you have more brokenness than you may admit to, because it's difficult to allow other people to see you who you really are. It's not easy allowing yourself to become vulnerable to other people and to let them see you for who you really are. No one thinks that they'll be liked when they do that. But step 1 is we admit we are powerless over the effects of our separation from God, that our lives have become unmanageable. What does that mean? Well, that simply means that, you know what? I've recognized that I have made all the mistakes that I've made in my life. I can attribute none of those to anyone else. As much as I would like to blame parents for not coming with a manual, they didn't know how to raise my sister and I. You know, my parents did the very best job that they knew how, that the skills that they had. They did a good job. But even at best, I messed them up. If you want a good scripture to go back and look back at Romans 7:17 through 20. Paul said, "But I need something more. For if I know the law but still can't keep it, if the power of sin within me keeps sabotaging my best intentions, I obviously need help." How many of you feel like you've been in that place? I mean, even when you do your best, you still blow it. You still mess up. I realize that I don't have what it takes. I can will it, but I can't do it. I decide to do good, but I really don't do it. I decide not to do bad, but then I do it anyways. My decisions are such as they are, don't result in action. Something has gone wrong deep within me and gets the better of me every time. That's what Paul said. He realized, someone who wrote 2/3 of the Bible, 2/3 of the New Testament, if he couldn't make it, knowing what all he knew, how can we do better? Only with God's help. Step 2 is about the birth of faith on the inside of us. Step 2 states, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. And I guarantee you that only God can. Not in your own strength, for it is God, who is all the while effectively working in you, energizing and creating in you the power and desire both to will and to work for His good pleasure and satisfaction in His delight. Number 3, we make a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God. I cannot do it. I cannot do, George, I can't do it. The very best job I can do, I still screw up. I still make mistakes. More than He would like, but I still do. Romans 12:1. So here's what I want you to do. God helping you. Take your everyday, ordinary life, your sleeping, eating, going to work, and walking around life, and place it before God as an offering. That's Romans 12, verse 1. Embracing what God does for you is the best thing you can do for Him. Don't become so well adjusted to your culture. You listening to me, church? Don't get so well accustomed to your culture that you fit in it without even thinking about it. Instead, fix your attentions on God. You'll be changed from the inside out, readily recognizing what He wants from you and quickly respond to it. The first 3 steps are about having peace with God. The next, start talking about having peace with ourselves. Step 4, this is what we covered last week, involves a self-examination. And last week I invited you to do something that's very difficult to do. To make a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. That's Lamentations 3, verse 40. Let us examine our ways and test them, and let us return to the Lord. I talked last week about the fact that for many years I lied about who I was to a wife that loved me, gave her life to live with me. Lied to my family about who I was. Lied to God and the fact that I thought what He had created was not good enough. That I said to God, I said, you know what? I would much rather play like I'm something else than to be like who You've made me to be. And in my own mind, I judged what He did as insufficient. And I lived that life. I guess I knew from the time I was about 9 years old that there was something different about me. I liked guys. I liked my Sunday school teacher. I never missed Sunday school. Mr. Roscoe, bless his heart, taught me more Bible than I could ever possibly hope to know. And I wanted to learn because he gave me something that my own dad couldn't do. It wasn't because he didn't want to, it's because he didn't know to do it. My dad was nearly 50 years older than me. My dad would be 100 years old today. All that to say, we as parents believe with the best books, the best psychologists out there. I grew up with Dr. Spock, not the pointed ears Spock, but the other Dr. Spock, who said, you never hold your baby. You never hold your baby. You put the bottle up and you prop it up so that they are no longer dependent upon you. Well, you know what? That happened. I grew up non-dependent upon my parents. The problem with it is that's not a healthy place to be. They are there so we can learn what God is like, that we can go to them when we have a need and them feel welcoming enough to us to embrace us and say, I will do what I can do for you. That's what our parents are supposed to be. But when your parents aren't taught that and don't have that nurturing spirit on the inside of them, they do the best job. But that's where our Heavenly Father has got to step in. And that's where we've got to allow Him to do that. Unfortunately, our culture has alienated ourselves from God. He has never left. I've told this story before about a little old husband and wife riding down the freeway in their little old car, putzing down the road, cars wailing past them. You know, and she's sitting over on her side, what I used to call when I was in high school, shining the doorknob. And I'm on this side over here. The old man's over here, and they're just coasting down the street. And she's looking over at him. She's griping and complaining. She says, well, how come we don't sit close to each other anymore? You know, I used to sit really close. We used to sit really close together. He's still driving. She's just griping, batting, complaining, all this stuff. And he pulls over to the side of this little old car, and he looks at her and said, I have never moved. We have moved away from God, who loves us. But we chose to believe a lie out of the mouths of those people that we expected to bring us the truth. But the problem is, men and women are fallible. This is the truth. I hit every problem in my life. I figured if I was good enough, and I don't want to spend a lot of time recapping last week, but I felt if I was good enough, if I could cloak myself in perfectionism and I could be really good, then other people, kids at school, my friends, my family, wouldn't see that little part of me which I wanted to hide so desperately. I denied its gift to me, because it is a gift. We are gifted. And God has blessed us beyond measure. The problem is, We believed a lie that said we should not embrace who we are. I grew up thinking that. It took me till I was 46 to finally grab a hold of the fact that God had never left me. God never changed. I never spoke. Kathy Kennedy, who's been in my church, she's been a friend of mine and in my church for nearly 30 years, in my other church. And I'll tell you something. I know that I know that I know, like Oral Roberts taught us when I went to school there, way down deep in my knower, that I'm a child of God. And no one can take that away from me. I know my name. I've been called it my whole life. And when I hear it, I turn because I recognize that. I know the voice of my Father. And I know that when He calls me, I hear Him. We talked about Mephibosheth. If you didn't get that, you need to get a hold of the YouTube and listen to it. Step 5. We talked about the hard thing of writing down all of our defects. I had to write down I'm a liar. I had to write down the fact that I denied the very gift that God had given me. I denied. I had to say to myself, you know what? You're probably more lie than truth. I've told Mark this story. We had a huge ministry beforehand, and we had a large television ministry. We were on television stations all across the country, and we had people interviewed who were healed in our services all across the country. And we had a lady call, and she had been healed of cancer. Well, who wouldn't want to know about that? So we talked with this lady. She was a doctor who had been healed of cancer. What more would you want on a television program? To tell the fact that God even heals doctors and that they know the history behind it all. We flew her in from Arkansas. Down here, we were doing our production here in Dallas, and we had her on the television. She told her story about who she was and that she's a doctor, and she went on. And we had her traveling with us to verify the healings that people were confessing to. Fabulous. Until I got a letter that said that she wasn't a doctor. Uh-oh. We've got videotape of her saying she is. A letter saying she's not. Got another letter. Somebody else. She is not a doctor. Confronted with the letters, this woman said, I am a doctor. See my badge. She had it made. She had told the story about her being a doctor. She was a lab tech. She wore a white coat. Someone gave her a pair of stethoscopes. Put that around her head. Someone had a badge made for her, Dr. So-and-so, MD. It was a joke within a lab, but that joke became the truth, became her reality, because she told it so much that she believed it herself. I know a lot of people who have denied who they were for so long that they believe it, but yet on the inside they live in such turmoil, such stress, that they take their own lives because they can't get out.